Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining today's senior leadership briefing. I wanted to start by thanking the many people who took the time to think about and send in their questions for Daniela. Your assistance in focusing our webcasts and making them really relevant to our audience is really invaluable. So we're very grateful for all your efforts doing that. Thank you also to White Clark Group for sponsoring today's event. IAFN are delighted to be working with them to develop this leadership series. And in my view, it represents a great example of how a proactive relationship we've built over many years can develop genuinely valuable events that are there for marketing as well, but the events that make a genuine contribution to the industry. And that seems to me to be really positive. We know from the number of people who've joined today and last week in Richard Jones' session that these sessions are of great interest to both our auto and our equipment finance communities. It's our proud aim in working with White Clark Group to bring these communities together to spark ideas among our members which will drive new business, grow our industry, and help us all to better meet changing customer needs in a changing world. So technology change, it seems, is affecting everything at the moment. We announced this morning in Asset Finance International that IDS Group and White Clark Group have now completed their agreement to join forces to build a secured finance technology powerhouse focused on the auto finance and the equipment finance and working capital markets. We're looking forward to working with this new group here at IAFN, and I wanted to take this opportunity to invite one of their senior leadership team to join us on one of these leadership events to find out more about what their vision is for technology as they face what they describe in this industry as an industry technology upgrade. It seems to me to be an interesting thing to explore. So, okay, as you're listening today, you'll think of things that you would like to ask if you were me and doing the job as a moderator. We would really like it if you'll take the trouble to use the chat platform, the chat window on the On24 platform to ask those questions. I'm only sorry that the platform we use, like all of this first generation of webcast platforms and conference platforms, it prevents you from asking the question direct. In some strange way, they've developed this idea of interaction at scale, which is it's an oxymoron, because what it really means is it limits how you can interact with us. As soon as we can improve that interaction through a better platform, we'll buy it. But for now, we would be really grateful if you could take the trouble to tap in the questions. We will answer them, whether it's now or after the event. So please, the big message is ask your questions. Okay, my guest today is someone who surely must understand the frustrations and delights of technology. And she's not a typical employee for a financial services company. She grew up in Rio, the youngest daughter in what she describes as a conventional family home. She initially followed her father's career, graduating as an engineer, and was completing her master's degree when she was approached by strategy consultants McKinsey & Company to assist Wella, the hair care, styling and colorants manufacturer, to optimize their international supply chain, a role which gave her a high degree of autonomy at what was really a very young age, and freedom, in her words, to set up what was the business model for the future for Wella. She described that role as being very international. And so that was quite a first job by anyone's measure, and an amazingly interesting one to go in, I'm sure. So fast forward 20 years, Weitmann has completed a retail executive program at Cornell and a digital business strategy executive program focused on digital transformation at MIT Sloan Business School of Management. And she's leaving her role at Converse, which is a subsidiary of Nike, an organization which has come to be seen, particularly through the pandemic, as the gold standard for digital transformation in B2C. Nike recently announced that it had achieved its target of 30% penetration through the digital channel 2 years early and in the height of the pandemic. So that's no mean achievement. Daniela, welcome to IAFN. We're delighted to have you join us, and we're really interested to hear what you have to say about digital transformation at DLL. In the annual 2020 report, I read an interview with you where you said, almost as an explanation of why you were taking the role of Global Head of Digital Transformation, leveraging knowledge and experience on digital journeys from experts from other companies and other industries is fundamental for DLL's digital transformation strategy. I think this nicely frames today's discussion, and I'd like to explore it more with you in a moment. But perhaps I can start by asking what I think is a slightly cheeky question, which was asked by more than one of our members in the community, and that is, what propelled you to make the jump from retail, and not just any retail, but the gold standard digital transformation retail, to what some might describe as the less glamorous world of equipment finance?
Thank you, Edward, and hello, everyone in today's call. Well, what happens in the consumer world will make its way into the business-to-business world. It's this concept of liquid expectations, right? That whatever you experience as a consumer, you start to immediately expect that you will have this level of experience in your own business environment or in the industry that you are in. So when I look back in my career, Edward, I did make conscious choices to move from industry to industry, from country to country, from function to function. And when DLL invited me to join for the digital transformation journey, it was quite much of a decision anchored on purpose, to partner for a better world, and with the awareness that the experience I had before would really be impactful for the industry that I've just joined right now. And I'm having lots of fun with it.
Fantastic. So the basic principle everybody should have in mind is what's happening in today's retail B2C world is what's likely to be the next experience in the B2B world. And that is a reason why you can come into DLL and be ahead of the game. So I want to organize this webcast into 3 main sections. And the first one, I think, is to look at what happened in Nike and to get you to talk a little bit about what lessons it directly provides for DLL as they manage the digital transformation. The second section of today, I'd like to explore a bit more about the digitalization journey so far at DLL. I want to hear a little bit more about Route 95, about operational excellence, and something that I know is very close to your heart, which is the underestimated people aspect of digital transformation. And the third area I'd like to do is to look at what you're laying on top of that, which is your plans as you start this work, where you talk about making connections that matter, which, rightfully or wrongly, I'm seeing as building loyalty, customer retention, and increasing the lifetime value of each customer. So those are all worthy goals. But before we start on the Nike journey, I wonder if I could ask my colleague, David Beckley, to ask the first poll question.
Sure, Edward. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. So those of you who joined us before on previous webinars, you know what the formula is. We believe we've got a winning formula now, but what we do is we introduce each section with a poll question to get you thinking, get the juices flowing. So the first poll question is this: equipment finance companies are well positioned to transition their provision of services online, supporting manufacturers who are increasingly focused on direct-to-consumer, that's D2C business models. And the answers, as usual, are strongly agree, neither agree nor disagree, disagree or strongly disagree. And if you could answer the poll question now, and then, Edward, you can start the interview. We're all looking forward to it.
Thank you, David. Miles, in a few moments, will you move the slide on so everybody can see the results? Daniela, yes, can you give us an overview of Nike's digital transformation and give us some idea of what the lessons you directly take from Nike for vendor finance providers like DLL?
Yes, sure. My pleasure. It's important that we are grounded on the unique culture that Nike has. The culture is anchored on its ethos to serve the athlete. And if you have a body, you are an athlete. That's how we approach the athlete. And if you have the humility of an athlete, you want to ask for feedback. You want to listen from experts around you how you are performing. You want to make sure that you are coached. Whatever you are going to receive as a feedback, even if it hurts, even if it's difficult to hear, you will take it, because that will make you run 1 second faster. That will make you run 1 mile longer. So I think just to start from there, this ethos is something that is present in everybody that is part of this membership of this culture and teamwork, right? I recall that back in 2012 when I joined, and what I'm sharing here, it's based on public information and also my own opinion as a leader that participated in co-leading part of this digital transformation at Nike. Back in 2012, imagine that only 5% of Nike's business was direct to consumer. We were doing our business based on a set of 30,000 plus retailers that we had to manage. And those 30,000 retailers had access to all of the range of our assortments, all of the range of our products, and they were everywhere on a physical environment before digital became a dominant force. When we looked into that setup and decided to make a shift from selling inventory towards our customers and started to focus on the consumer first. That is a consumer direct offense that you've heard before. That's when we started to retrofit and say, how are we going to divide our customer base and make sure that we equip them on a way that they will be able to tell our stories without filtering the message that we want to give to our consumers. So it became a consumer obsession that later moved towards and evolved to become a membership obsession, that we want to build membership and relationships for life. So it started quite there around this bold vision to drive a direct offense while we were driving an integrated marketplace. Now, the integrated marketplace is an interesting one as well, Edward, because we didn't only had to look into the customer segmentation, we also had to start to think, where do we want our stories to be told? How are we going to be premium at every customer level? How are we going to drive innovation at every customer level? How are we going to start to drive differentiation so we do not cannibalize our own business and we expand our market share and expand the experience that we bring to consumers at the end? So that ability to start to lead the market and have a dialogue direct to consumers, regardless of what was the architecture in between, made both our direct to consumer business grow and over-index all of the other parts of the business. And it also made our digital business, because digitally we could tell directly to the consumers, grow and over-index all of the other business. There is an interesting story here that I think that we need to learn, because it's bold to approach it that way, that from the 30,000 retailers and partners we've selected 40 global strategic accounts that later became 5 global strategic accounts, where we changed completely the way that we would partner with them to go to market. So this is those are a couple of interesting aspects of the consumer direct offense that later also evolved to a consumer direct acceleration when we were some years into the maturity.
So how does this translate, do you feel, into the same model for manufacturers in the B2B space? What does a digitally transformed DLL look like, and how does it perform those functions in the B2B market?
Yeah, well, I identify multiple opportunities for DLL and for our industry to actually learn from what happened in retail and bring towards us, right? I will start with some similarities that DLL does have with the Nike world. We are both global leaders, global companies with global scale and reputation. So on a digital world, you start to blur the barriers of physical presence. So that global presence, that scale matters. The second part is that both brands to have the customers at the center. At Nike, we were talking about the consumer at the center, and in asset finance, you always look into the customer at the center as well. So I think that this is an important similarity that is critical on a digital world. The third one is compelling experiences is something that we all want to have. Some industries, we start to drive experience first. Some industry, we start to drive relationship first, but it's all part of an experience. I think that we have an opportunity here to just check how are we going to balance the digital experience side to enhance the human interaction that already exists in our current industry today. And the last point is that at the core of our innovation is our industry knowledge. So if we keep that filter, it's something that is also very powerful to have as a transferable skill and guiding principle.
Okay, so we begin to see a little bit about what the vision is and how you might extend from the digitalization program that DLL has already started on. Where do these traditional finance products that we've all been using for years, leasing and so on, fit into this digital ideal? I have this feeling that when I look at where finance has been provided online, it has often been a much more simple, easy, customer-friendly experience, and most of the progress to date has been on unsecured loans. What's your feeling about the finance, the range of finance products that we've got available now, and whether they fit into that new world where you're building a strong relationship with your customers?
Yes. So one area that is going to be a guiding principle when we look into products that we bring to market is we will push, and we intend to push our industry in creating products that will capture consumer insights, customer insights, user insights to shape the product itself, right? So let's start from a critical shift that instead of bringing to market products that will be technology-led, driven, that there will be consumer, customer-led in the development of the product itself. And you mentioned yourself, Edward, people prefer simple nowadays. So I start to also challenge, what is the price sensitivity that exists today if we start to compare with the simplicity of a payment solution? So there are a couple of other things and key shifts that potentially are necessary. I've talked about instead of starting from a technology at the center, that we start with the experience and the need at the center and retrofit the solution of products we have. The other aspect is what are the guiding principles that we do know that customers we want. We know our customers do want a seamless, effortless, consistent premium experience. We know that. We all want that. We know our customers want self-serve, especially on a post-COVID environment. We know that we are used now in many aspects of our own lives to self-serve, to research, to engage on blogs, to engage with communities, to advertise something. We know that we want to be self-served. We know that we want to be self-served not only through one channel, but through multiple channels. And even better if they are simultaneously, right? That you have the ability to write an email, to be on a live chat, to call over a mobile, or to access wherever you want. We know our customer also wants, or our strategic partners also want to capture market share if there is any market consolidation or disintermediation that is a result of the current situation that we're living in. So when we start to put all of those elements together and we focus on better serving for a lifelong engagement and to drive the repeat engagement, then it's when we can start to build quite a meaningful set of product propositions. I hope that answers your questions.
Well, yes, it does. Rather more than I expected. So that's really interesting. Thank you for that. David, I wonder if there are any questions from the audience just yet.
Yes, there are, and there is quite a few questions on a very similar subject. We've got a question from Nick Taylor at Class and Helen Applegarth, for instance, at SocGen, and they're really about what you've been talking about here. And I think, Daniela, you talked about putting the customer in the center. You talked about making it simple for the customer, giving the customer the ability to self-serve, giving them a seamless online to offline journey, but at the same time allowing customers to interact with the company via multiple channels. That all sounds really complicated at the same time when you're running a digital transformation. So the questions that are coming in are along the same lines, and they're saying that how can you, in order to achieve all that, do you go out and do you buy some new sort of platform, or do you develop your existing platforms generically in-house? And this answer will be of great interest to our sponsor as well, of course. So, what's the solution to this complicated conundrum?
The solution, it's not as simple as the theory, right? So what I would like to is to buying a technology keeps us just looking into technology first, needs after. I love to let's start from the needs from the external and start later to move in and see what can we do to be able to enable that need. So I think that's the key, and we will talk about that later on. If we do need to make key fundamental shifts as an organization, as an industry to advance, my preference is to invest on behavior, mindset, culture, and the second part, look into acquiring the capabilities that we do need to change. Because technology and innovation is coming all the time. We will find a way to deliver what the customer needs. But that mindset shift around, regardless of how we've done business in the past 50 years, we are at a turning point. And just keeping on doing business how we did in the past is not going to drive the market as the market is wanting us to be playing.
Yeah, which is great, and I think everybody would agree with that. But the business you're in now, the finance and leasing business, is a highly regulated business. So we've had a number of questions about regulation, and in the business that I run a couple of new start tech businesses as well, and our customers are asking us for loads of things, but actually some of them we can't deliver because the regulation doesn't allow us to do so. So how do you see the regulation? I mean, it's universal; it covers everybody. Do you see that as a real barrier for these changes that you want to make in your new career?
No, not necessarily. I do not see that as a barrier. I do see that. Given the advance of customer needs, how are we going to, instead of letting the existing barriers that existed in the past to be regulating, to be dictating how we serve, can we start asking, how did the circumstances change since then? Is it possible for us to approach this from another angle? One example is that, well, nowadays, and coming from the industry, right, I've been a general manager for Converse in the last 5 years, and we didn't have any employee based in 8 out of the 11 countries I've operated. And we owned a business, significant business in those countries. We could start to engage with consumers on a different way. That doesn't mean that we were not physically there. We were physically and digitally there. So just 3 years before that, we would have a branch and a full operating team in each of the countries. So I think it's more questioning, are there different ways for us to approach the way we've done business in the past?
Okay, good answer. Thank you very much indeed. So, Edward, looking at the time, I think we need to move on to topic 2.
We do indeed, and I can see your question sets. The number of questions have quadrupled during that one session alone, so we're in danger of running over. But here's the second poll, which I hope you can all see. David, do you want to read it through?
I do, yeah. So poll question 2 is: the senior leaders in equipment finance companies encourage their employees to challenge old ways of working and experiment with new ideas. And it's the same answer: strongly agree, etc. So please answer your question. Miles will show the results on the screen, and Edward, please, over to you for topic 2.
Thank you. So topic 2 is about just that. And I'd like to start by exploring a little bit about where DLL are now and your Route 95 ambition, and then to move relatively quickly into the people aspect of digital transformation, which I know is a topic which is dear to your heart, but seems to dominate all the best practice advice as well, which was something of a paradox I felt when you're talking about technology, that it's really all about the people. So can you tell us a little bit about Route 95? Tell us how it's progressing. Tell us how the pandemic has messed it all up or has made it better. And, what you see, how important you think this sort of traditional focus on operational excellence is as part of the process that is involved in digitalization.
Sure. From my background, I do like to call things that are customer experience, customer facing, above the line, and whatever is not customer facing is below the line. And Route 95 is a way for a company, in this case for DLL, to drive competitive advantage through automating and digitalizing its core processes. So this is a below the line activity. However, we would like to drive automation. Will have, of course, a huge impact on speed, on reliability to our customers, but we may choose to do that on multiple ways. And this has been on DLL's journey for quite a while already, and we are advancing significantly in the last year. What I challenged the team, and together with the DLL team, we've started to do differently, was instead of starting internal and then going to keep serving and interfacing towards the customer what we think they want, why don't we start from the customer at the center? So we looked into transforming the core, but with an external perspective, and understanding more our customer needs, so we can start to drive whatever is above the line. We can start to drive meaningful and relevant experiences to our customers. So both are, and those areas have been focused for us in the last months since I joined.
Okay, so I'd like to stay below the line for a little bit longer, and then explore above the line in more depth in the next topic area. But can you give me an idea of how this below the line activity is actually changing the jobs that people are doing in DLL? How's it changing their life? And what does that mean for their more traditional roles of underwriting and customer sales and all those other things? Is it making those less important?
I wouldn't say less important. I think that we all do need to upskill during an evolution in digital acceleration. So I wouldn't say less important, but of course there are more focus on different roles, so we can substitute and automate repetitive tasks and reshift resources towards areas that they can drive more value. So this is a fundamental shift that we see in multiple industries when you start to be able to automate and digitalize. I do not see that we are making critical capabilities for our business redundant. On the opposite, we are making sure that we put the human interaction on areas that we absolutely do need that skills the most.
Okay, we've had a very interesting question come in before the event from Bill Verheel. I'm never sure if that's the correct pronunciation. Bill, if I've pronounced it wrongly, then please forgive me. But Bill is an innovator in the American equipment leasing industry, and he's a former CEO of Alpha, which is the American Trade Association. And he wrote and asked, he said, I'm interested in Ms. Weitmann's thoughts on joining an industry that has not yet seen the massive impact of digital disruption, which most believe is still coming to business equipment finance. What cultural and employee mindset challenges does she anticipate facing at DLL? And how does she think she can overcome those challenges?
Brilliant. So I've been through multiple disrupted industries, and I would like to share with you two examples of these experiences during a period of major transformation for those industries as well. Back at Kraft Foods, and whoever here has been working on the food industry, specifically in fast-moving consumer goods, does know that food industry margins are super tight, so you do need to manage your business very efficiently. So I was responsible for chocolate at Kraft Foods. For those of you based out of UK, Cadbury probably rings a bell. Then the company at that time, back 10 plus years ago, was heavily reliant on its media strategy, because to be able to grow both top line and bottom line consistently. And that was exactly the moment that media started to disrupt. So consumers were suddenly, the committed money that Kraft did have to engage with consumers were locked on TV advertisement, out-of-home advertisement or magazines, and that started to not be where we would meet the consumers. It would be on social media, it would be on blogs, it will be somewhere else. So Irene Rosenfeld, the CEO of Kraft Foods at the time, took that disruption herself as a major transformational project for Kraft and said, we will not be playing defense as we see this happening. Let's lead this transformation and set up a model of how media is going to be driven in the future. So she selected and it made a company-wide project that was selecting the top talents of the company and putting them in positions to start to develop a modeling exercise and partnering with ecosystems around us so we could build what media consumption will happen in the future. So the example I would like to give here is that was a company that was leader in their industry, was being forced to disrupt and moved from play defense to playing offense. Go later towards Nike. A bit of the same thing happened with Nike, right? It's a storybook example of how you approach retail disruption. Retail innovation and whoever, if we're based in US, you will see the concept of molds, or if you're based anywhere else in Europe, you can see innovation on high streets or retail disruption in high streets that happened in the last 10 years. The innovation in retail, you started with department stores back in the 40s. You moved into having outlet centers or big malls. Then you moved towards having specialty stores like a Victoria's Secrets of this world or Toys R Us of this world. Then it evolved towards big box concepts like Home Depot. Then it evolves later on towards big global retailers. Imagine Zara's and H&M that started to be present all over the world. Then e-commerce, then omnichannel, and then it started to go towards just pure players. So that trajectory made the way that Nike approached the retail from Zen to Nirvana to be something that was impacting directly our strategy. So what we did was step back and start to see, okay, how is this consumer-led retail landscape impacted today? What is impacting consumer decision? Is access, is experience, it's price. And what exactly is impacting access, experience, and price? What can we do to start leading that kind of discussion on access, premium, and price? So we started to map this multi-dimensional landscape on how we would go to market to start to exaggerate points of differentiation of how our brand would be there, both digitally and physically, right? And started to make tough calls around where we would like to be present, where we would not like to be present. And whoever owns a business here or is part of a business or owns a P&L knows that many times those tough calls will have financial consequences for your P&L. And if you are a public company, financial consequences for also the returns and growth that you are bringing to market. So those were tough discussions. So this example is more to say, instead of letting a disrupted industry lead you into defense, go out there, understand what it is, and disrupt yourself, because it's never as bad consequences if you are going to be disrupted yourself. But now getting to Bill's question around how do we bring this kind of how are we going to drive those changes within the culture of DLL for us to be successful? I like to think, and I know that there are some DLL colleagues here with us today. They should shout if they disagree. But I like to think that DLL just hiring a leader like me, or hiring role models, or bringing in this mindset and have them embedded in the organization to start to accelerate the mindset shift, it's already a huge testament for how serious we are about our digital acceleration. It's a risky move, bringing someone that is not a traditional hire, a traditional leader in an industry, but being open to receive those ideas. So I just like to call out there, sometimes it's just playing offense instead of playing defense.
Okay. That's a great answer. Thank you. So we have getting the right digital savvy leaders in place, and a lot of it comes down to communicating the vision to your teams. David, have you got questions that you'd like to ask?
We've got loads of questions. I was very interested to hear about your relationship with chocolate, Daniela. So I lived in Sweden for a long time, and me and my family, we believed that Marabou, which is also produced by Mondelez International, is the best chocolate in the world. It's better than Cadbury's. So we may want to comment on that.
Yeah, I've been responsible for Marabou for multiple years, and actually I was based in
You have my family's gratitude, undying gratitude, because we love Marabou chocolate. There's been lots and lots of questions in about corporate culture, and not just the culture of the leaders, but also of the people. So One question good question from Ian Robertson from Invigors, who's a good friend of ours. He asked this question. There's quite a few others asked a very similar question as well. And it's about the corporate culture of Nike and the corporate culture of DLL. And it's really about which one of those cultures do you think is more likely to enable digital transformation? It's not just the culture, it's also the people in the business, which people in the business are, which ones are more receptive to digital transformation. And then there's a second part of the question where a lot of people are asking about, and it's about digital journeys, that some customers actually don't want a digital journey. They want to speak to somebody as part of that journey. So there's two sides to the question. One, the culture internally, and then the external facing culture to the customers. Does it all have to be digital, or is there room for, I usually call it analog and digital. Is there still room for an analog culture side by side with a digital culture?
Oh, I love that question, actually. Both questions. I've had the privilege of working on multiple cultures and corporate cultures throughout my career. There are some companies that are more mechanistic in the way that they approach decision-making, empowerment, and rooms of freedom, right? Degrees of freedom. I'll give an example of Kraft Foods. Margins are so low that you do have the scope of your role, teams work together, it works as a machine. So if someone does need to be replaced, this person is replaced. I'm exaggerating just to make a point. Nike, I would say that the culture of Nike is more like a flock of birds. You set the direction, you set the vision, you just empower teams, let them do it. There is a certain degree of chaos, but it's a bit like a teamwork. You do not work in isolation, you work in teams. And you empower locally where you are closer to the ethos of what the brand is, that is the athlete. The question around the culture that we do have nowadays at the DLL and the culture that is needed to digitally transform. There are three elements that I think that are essential for in DLL's culture today that are almost the DNA of DLL, that are fundamental for a digital future-proof company. One of them is the level of talent we have. We have phenomenal talent. And I like to say that is in the industry. The second is that the quality of the relationship among the talent we have is phenomenal. It's a very collaborative culture that is also fundamental on a digital world. And the third one is that everybody does believe that the future is brighter, which is also a trait that we do have in digital, that, well, wherever you fail, you stand up and you keep on moving because you do know that there is a higher destination going forward. So we do have all elements within our own culture at DLL that is enabling us to digitally transform. There are some processes that are enabling the velocity of change. That is one of the reasons why I'm joining here as well, so we can bring some of those processes to enable the change. Now I will go to the second part of the question, that is the presence of analog interactions. And one of the main aha moments that I did have throughout my retail, almost decade career at Nike, has been that when we started to get into the digital world, we were analyzing the pendulum between how are we going to meaningfully interact with consumers if we are not physically there. And we saw that at the end, consumers do want to know that we are real, do want to have the physical experience, do want to have a place that they go and showroom, that they experience, they talk, they see. It's the magic of retail. And our digital sales, our digital business was growing on places that we did have an amazing physical presence. So the physical presence complementing the digital narrative and the digital touch points and the digital interactions is critical. So we developed a key fundamental aspect of the strategy was to over-index presence in key cities, to over-index presence on curated specific areas where influencers would go, and that will serve as a media center for trends to be set. So that replicates into our strategy at DLL, the digital strategy, that is not digital to replace human, it's to enhance human interactions.
Okay, thank you.
Great. David, are you ready to start on the next section?
Yeah, I did lose sound for a short while, Daniela, but thank you very much indeed for that very, very comprehensive answer. So looking at the time, we need to move quickly on to topic 3. So topic 3 is all about creating lifetime relationships with customers. So it's a great transition from the last question into this particular poll question. And the poll question is this: digitalization for manufacturer captives and vendor finance providers should extend beyond digital sales enablement and optimizing operational excellence to leveraging the opportunities presented by digital to maximize retention and the lifetime value of each customer. And again, it's the same answer: strongly agree to strongly disagree. So Edward, over to you for this final topic in this intriguing interview.
Thank you, David. So we finally get to above the line, which is the really interesting part of this. And you described it in a number of ways to me. The first was building a lifetime relationship with customers. Again, this people thing being the most important in technology. And the new motto of DLL's digital transformation is creating connections that matter. Now, look, I wondered whether we could take a for instance, and it doesn't need to apply to anything in particular, but I suggest that we might think about agriculture. I know it's a sector that DLL deal with, but can you give us an idea of what this actually means to a farmer who buys tractors or something? What are the connections that might matter? What would be an example of it? I know that there's a process that you go through, but can you take us through that process and give us a feel for what it all looks like?
Yeah, on a digital world, connections. Digital is all about connections, right? It's connecting products, connecting customers, connecting ecosystems, connecting talent. And that matter implies focus, implies sense of urgency. So that's why we are creating that motto. And it's not necessarily just on connecting our internal systems, connecting above the line, but connecting towards new business models and how we're going to shape the future of the industry as well. I like to also at this part expand it towards the future and business models. We do have multiple examples how in the digital era growth is going to be led in some shape or form through platform-based ecosystems, right? So those platform-based ecosystems, they enable us to tap into network effect, they tap into provide new access to demands for your product. So it's not necessarily a question of if we will in the future tap into networks, tap into platforms, tap into ecosystems. It's a question of how we're going to do it. I love to get back to the example when, and I will get to the agriculture later on. Okay. But I recall when we had a look at Nike and Amazon. This is an interesting example that I think that people can probably correlate and have a tangible example. It was I've been part of those discussions when we started to see that our brand and our products, they were showing up in Amazon, and we didn't have an official relationship with Amazon at the time, and we were diligently, like very with an extreme focus, managing our marketplace to maintain the pool of products in the market on the way that we would like to control the messaging. And we started to see, look, whatever Amazon is doing is resonating with consumers on the price side, on the access side. We are not able to do that today. Our platforms is still a low single-digit % of our business. We are not able to storytell through our own platform. So we started to look up how can we be assertive in this relationship and truly officialize a relationship with Amazon so we can be intentional in learning everything we can learn about being a truly digital business. So we put our best talent there so we could get capabilities, we could empower a team, and we learned everything about next day delivery, always available in inventory, shared assortments, direct assortments, returns, traffic, conversion, basket drivers. Suddenly we did in a couple of years, almost like an MBA on how to drive a business on a platform-driven world. In parallel with that, we didn't take our eyes off the game. That was, let's manage the brand the way we want to manage the brand, and created unbreakable relationships with key strategic partners, developed our own direct-to-consumer offense, developed our own digital direct offense. And from a point of strength, we broke the relationship with Amazon. So it has always been, instead of do not want to participate, be shy, be away and go out and say, I cannot do that because the way I do business is that way. We went the other way around and said, we will participate, but we will learn so much that we will be able to exit that relationship when the time comes. So I think that this example just shows that at the end, the questions that I think that we all here in this group should be asking is not a question about how are we going to tap into ecosystems in the future, but how do we want to use that? How does it fit with our company's values? How does it fit with our company's growth targets? Do we want to be the platform? Do we want to be servicing a platform? Do we want to be managing multiple ecosystems? How digitally we are going to be present in multiple different ecosystems? So this kind of discussions is essential and potentially like step one that we have to take to drive the future growth.
Daniela, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit, because it sort of thundered at me that you ditched Amazon, which I've always seen as the gold standard for the retail experience, but bought into Foot Locker, and you built in participation in the ecosystem there. Can you give us the contrast of how you worked with Foot Locker and how that builds value?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is anchored back into the discussion we had before, Edward, around let's not focus on the transactional value of a conversion of the season we're operating. We are focused on the long term and driving a long time unbreakable relationship with consumers. And the way we do that is through selling a story, through selling something that is emotional, is relatable, does have a functionality, but that there is that we sell an enablement, and we are part of the life of the athletes. Of course, there is a business component to it, and there is a market value to it, and we do have targets of growth together with our retail partners as well. But when we do that, with Amazon, they don't tell the story. We are one box in the big scheme. With a Foot Locker, a partner as Foot Locker, a partner as a JD, a partner as multiple others. I'm looking into UK now, ASUS, for example, that is a pure player. We are able to together tell a story that has a sharp point, and we are premium at the point of sale with our consumers. There is another concept that I think is important here, is that when we started to move away from thinking that we need to engage with the consumer at the moment of conversion and started to focus on moments that matter the most to our consumers, that is in the research phase, when they go into blogs, into their communities, to define what to buy, to understand what is cool, how they're going to belong if they have something. And after the conversion, when you start to brag about whatever you have, and that you really feel a sense of belonging, a sense of connection because you are part of a group. So I think that there are multiple elements here and the elements are it's around really building strategic connections with the retailers that you do have. And it takes guts to do that, because whoever is here does know that breaking with Amazon, it costs and impacts the business, right?
Sure. David, do you have questions that you would like to ask? Because I know we're running out of time, and I suspect that lots of people want to ask things.
We've had it's brilliant, Daniela. We've had loads and loads of questions, as many as I've ever seen before from the audience. So they're really interested in what you're having to say. So thank you for that. But can I ask a final question about, you talked about new business models, and I'm guessing that the Amazon intervention, I guess you saw as a risk to the business. So it's interesting to hear how you dealt with that key risk. But there's a lot of obviously risks in your new business, and the business model is changing. And one of the changes that we have questions about is the movement towards pay by use. And Edward and I did talk about this last week, actually. I just wondered whether Nike had ever experimented with, putting sensors in trainers, and whether you could charge people to pay by the mile for how many miles they ran in their trainers, and then contact them when it was the right time to change their trainers, and so on and so forth. And whether there was any of that thinking, whether you can bring any of that thinking to your new role in pay by use, because people want to pay for using goods, and they want to pay for outcomes. And also the second part of the question is that's a new risk. It's not a credit risk, it's a usage risk. And how will you bring your previous experience to deal with that new product and that new risk that product generates in the equipment financing business?
Yeah, well, pay per use is part of our business at DLL, right, and needs to be supported. What I like to look back, also some lessons learned on a truly digital mindset behavior that we did have at Nike, is that I don't know if any of us here in the call today does have a Nike
watch. Yeah.
Watch. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
So it was
a wristband. A wristband.
And it was a wristband that we developed, and we put an entire team to develop this wristband in partnership with Apple, by the way, and start to go into understanding more of our members through many of the apps we had. But that wristband was something that it was a huge investment that we started to look into technology to support the athletes, not only the products we bring. And after multiple iterations of that wristband, even if it gave many insights to us, we looked and said, this is not our core business. Let's partner with Apple. Let Apple do that. This is not what we sell. We start to look into also what our customers really want is the feeling of inclusivity, of exclusivity, is the feeling of being special, having something curated for them. On a digital world, it's no longer accepted that one size fits all, one size fits one, because we do have enough data and AI and the machine learning algorithms that will enable you to have the experience that is relevant for you. So I think that what I would like us to take from this experience is that there are some things that can be used in an industry. There are some things that are not really necessarily relatable to an industry, and some things that we should be doing in-house, some things you need to leverage ecosystems, because that gets the better capabilities from everybody involved.
Okay, so we could. It's a pity we've run out of time, because we could talk for the next half an hour on partnerships, which is a very important part of modern business, of course. So, but unfortunately, time is against us. So, over to you, Edward, for a conclusion.
Daniela, thank you very much for your taking the time today to explain to our members a little bit about your vision, and to give them a feeling for the direction in which you intend to take DLL. I wondered if you have one piece of advice that you would give a finance company looking at how digital is going to change their business. Do you have one piece of advice that you would give them, and what would that be?
The advice is that there are three areas that I think we should be focusing on when we think into our digital future that is now. First is who we are. What is our identity? Let's anchor on that because this is what really amplifies the connection with customers. The second is that how we operate. Can we do things differently? Can we drive a different agility to our business? So just let's check how we operate. And the third, we do need to focus also on how we scale. It's the ability to scale, to grow the business that is essential for us to survive and start to lead the disruption instead of being led.
Another great answer. Thank you, Daniela, very much indeed. And I hope that's met most of your questions. I will go through the question set and lift out anything that I think hasn't been answered, and I'll reply to you in private emails. But thank you very much indeed, Daniela. A great session and really interesting, fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you from me as well. Thanks, Daniela. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me here.